Hi everybody, welcome to our next lesson here as we talk about changes again. So today we're going to focus on some of the things you already know about, maybe from other history classes or other things you've learned or watched, but we're going to talk about expansion and division in the United States. So our objectives and standards to explain manifest destiny, to conclude how the United States was able to expand, to understand the divisions between the northern and southern states, and to analyze the results of the U.S. Civil War. Take a moment there and look over the standards. And our essential question, or desired result if you would, how did the United States expand and divide? So after the colonies gained their independence from Great Britain in 1783, colonists looked to expand settlements, okay? This map here shows you what the United States was like after the Treaty of Paris in 1783. So you can see the Spanish territory, British territory, some of the areas that were in dispute. But the United States gradually began to grow west of the Mississippi River, and the government also helped to expand and grow the new country as well. Some of the things that happened to expand territory in the United States is in 1803, President Thomas Jefferson purchased the Louisiana territory from France, which doubled the size of the country. 1819, Spain gave Florida to the United States. And then 1846, Great Britain gave part of the Oregon Territory to the United States as well. Now, many Americans are going to move west, and the reason for this is because some Americans believed in what was called manifest destiny, and this is the idea that the United States has a right to rule over all of North America. They wanted to control everything from the Atlantic Ocean to the Pacific Ocean, and many government leaders agreed with this and put policies in place to achieve this. One of the things that the government is going to do is they're going to remove Native Americans. So in 1830, we have the Indian Removal Act. Government officials could legally force Native Americans living in the East to move west. Some tribes tried to fight the law, but they lost, and many had to move westward to other areas, even though they had lived on this land for hundreds of years prior to any white Americans had. They had to move west on what would become known as the Trail of Tears. This is a depiction of it here. And unfortunately, many of them also died along the way as well. We also have some trouble in Texas. Now, Mexico is going to allow Americans to move into the territory of Texas, but Americans quickly became very upset with the way that Mexico ruled them. So in 1836, Texas revolted and won independence. One of the things they did, though, is this picture here shows you the Battle of the Alamo. You may have heard that before, but where some Americans held out against Mexican forces, the Alamo would become a symbol and a kind of battle cry for Americans to go to war against Mexico once the United States annexed Texas in 1845. So because the United States annexed Texas, or took it for itself, Mexico saw it as an act of war, and the United States will go to war with Mexico between 1846 and 1848. However, Mexico will be finally forced to surrender, and they will give up some territory to the United States as well. And this map here shows you the area that the United States will gain from the Mexican-American War. Of course, we didn't have those states there, but this kind of shows you what happened as a result of what we gained. We gained California, Nevada, Utah, some of Wyoming, Colorado, some of New Mexico, and some of Arizona. So the United States is able to finally pretty much extend itself across the entire country here. So crisis will rise. Many Northerners are going to see slavery in the South as wrong, and they want to abolish it. Some Southerners see it as necessary because they need it for their economy, and many want to expand it. Many Southern states also believe they had entered the United States on their own, and that since they had entered the United States on their own, they could leave it at their own free will as well. Northern states, however, believe that the country needs to stay together to stay strong and stay united as a union. The election in 1860 is going to pretty much divide the country, and with the victory of Republican Abraham Lincoln as president, Many Southerners were furious at this because Lincoln had promised to stop the spread of slavery, which again many Southerners were in favor of. So Southern states will begin to secede or withdraw from the Union, and they will become known as the Confederate States of America. So this map here shows you how the United States was divided. The blue states, or light blue states, were kind of technically part of the Union. So you can see Pennsylvania right here. We were part of the Union. We're right there. And then the red states would be the Confederate states. Those who had left the Union, a lot of them had, like we said, slavery in them, so they were in favor of keeping slavery. Then the white states out here were territories, states, areas that were not states yet. They were just territories. So the Civil War. In 1861, Confederate forces opened fire on the Federal troops stationed at Fort Sumter in Charleston, South Carolina. Lincoln ordered U.S. troops to bring Southern states back into the Union, says that they cannot fire on Union forces, and with that, the Civil War will begin. Now, again, not going to talk a lot about it, but if you have any questions about it, you can always talk to me about it. But 4 years later, in 1865, the Confederate States of America will be forced to surrender as well. Now, prior to the end of the war, in 1863, Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation. This declared slaves in the Confederate States free, and eventually Congress will pass amendments that will abolish slavery and give former slaves citizenship and the right to vote as well. So at this point, slavery will be over in the United States. But unfortunately, with Reconstructing the South, the Union forces will stay in the South to enforce the laws, and this is known as Reconstruction. Now, when these troops left, many Southern states passed laws to restrict the voting rights of African Americans, and they also encouraged segregation, which is the separation of African Americans and whites. And African Americans unfortunately faced violence and discrimination in the South, and also sometimes in the North as well. All right. So think about some of the things we talked about. How did the United States expand and divide? How did it expand its territory? Things like that. And then what kind of happens that leads to division in the United States, and what is a result of that division in the United States? All right. I hope you have a good rest of your day or evening. Talk to you guys soon.